Phadlo Khuri. I'm privileged to be chairman of the board of AUB and to welcome you, our students, and to say how delighted the board is that we have elected just 10 days ago, really, 2 weeks ago exactly, our new president, who will begin September 1 officially, but in some ways is already beginning to get involved and getting to know the campus by being out here this week, Dr. Fadlo Khuri, who's with us. His wife, Dr. Lamia Khoury, is also here. We're delighted she could come out as well and check out the campus. Now, I've got to be quite honest with you. This lovely couple knows AUB intimately in that they grew up on this campus. Their parents were faculty members here. They have relatives going way back who studied here. They are very much AUB in their bloodstream, as it were, and in their culture. But they have been away a long time, and they'll be the first to tell you in the United States. And I'll talk about that in a second. But I wanted to mention two people who are here. One very, very important person from my perspective, and I would argue from Dr. Khoury's as well, is Dr. Lara Halawi, who's right up front here. She was on the search committee, which was a search committee composed of trustees and one faculty member. She was that faculty member, and she really kept us in line in the best sense and advised us in the best kinds of ways as we went through what is always a very rich but complicated process. And so thank you, Lara, for your great contributions. And also with this is my friend Fadi Khandour, who's right back there. Fadi is a trustee of the university, and he flew in to be here. Today we have two sessions, one with students and then one again with the faculty and staff at 3. And we just like it when our trustees can find the time to come to campus whenever they can come, whether we're here or not. So on that. Secondly, I wanted to say a little about the process. It was, as I said, rich and complicated. We had 150 or more applications and nominations. We whittled that down to about 65 that we began to take seriously. We got that down to another 27 or so that we interviewed through our search firm, Russell Reynolds Associates, one of the great search firms based in North America, but is a global search firm. And then finally got down to 8 candidates whom we interviewed rigorously, whittled that down to 3 excellent finalists, and I say that, excellent finalists, and we whittled it down to 1 finalist, and that is Dr. Fadlo Khuri, and we're very proud of our decision. So that's the process. We got it done. We did it on time. And the best news is Dr. Khoury agreed to become the next president. And we're just delighted that he accepted our offer and will be with us for years to come, we assume and hope. Okay. The second thing I want to say is a little about his background. He grew up, born in Boston, but grew up in the university, in this community, went to the International College, spent a year at AUB, and then transferred to Yale University for his undergraduate degree, which he completed there in the mid-'80s, and then went to the Columbia University's College of Physicians and Surgeons for medical school, did internships and residencies and the like in his specialization, and he is a cancer specialist and in Boston at different institutions there before moving to various places, but Houston most importantly, to MS Anderson there, the light is back, and then finally to his current position at Emory University, one of the great medical schools in the United States in Atlanta, in Georgia, where he is head of the Department of Hematology and Oncology, a department he actually built nearly from scratch. And that's one of the reasons we were so interested in him. He knows a lot about how you build institutions and make them better. So that's a little about his background. He's got many honors, 300 publications. I mean, he does it all. I don't think he sleeps, honestly. And that's what presidents will need to do, I think, to run and govern AUB properly. So let me stop on that and then tell you why we chose him. Well, I already hinted at it. Anyone who can build such an excellent department is someone we're going to be very interested in. But we had certain criteria in this search that we wanted to focus on. One, integrity, personal integrity, and understanding of the importance of institutional integrity. This man carries this, wears this in spades. Everyone who knows him understands that he is Mr. Integrity. And this was so important to our search committee and finally to our Board of Trustees who voted him in, as I said, 2 weeks ago. We were interested in academic reputation, that he had to be excellent in his field, someone who was a clear leader as a researcher and as a teacher who cares about both, and he is passionate and very distinguished at the same time in his field of cancer research and is well known nationally and globally. He edits one of the great journals of cancer research, Cancer, of the American Cancer Society, among other things. As I said, he's a 24/7 kind of person. Another area we were interested in was management, the ability to really understand how institutions work, how you perfect institutions, how you make them a little better, how you make them a lot better eventually. And AUB is a great university, the greatest in this region. We know it. But it has work to do, and he has ideas for how to do that. Now, he hasn't crystallized all those ideas, and he'll be spending time with you and with other constituencies, you know, talking with you, listening closely to what your needs are and what your thoughts are, and that's going to be very important. Management, as I said, is has to be a great fundraiser. This institution requires new kinds of resources. Trustees are very generous, but we can't live off the trustees alone. We have to find all new ways of raising research funds and finding private funding for the university that's stronger than where we currently are, but we're doing very well on that front in recent years, so we're going to build on that. So those are some of the areas, but also he has a commitment to improving shared governance. How you make shared governance, the entire institution work in a governing way. And at the same time that he believes in shared governance and in working toward improving it, he's also a decisive person. He doesn't waste time. He listens, he takes advice, he takes wise counsel, he consults, and then he makes decisions. And the university feels we want someone of that quality who can do that, and he's very well known to be able to do that, okay? He cares enormously about the quality of life of our students, the academic quality of life and the social quality of life and cultural quality of life of our students. So you'll be hearing from him and engaging with him, I know. So those are just some of the major criteria that were very important to us. And it is really the reason this board voted as strongly as it did for Dr. Fadlo Khuri as our next president, and we are simply delighted you're with us, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Philip. So it's downhill from there, unfortunately. So I have some comments I want to make, but I mostly want to open it up to questions and a dialogue. But I'm going to start by doing the one thing that you hate for me to do, which is to put some ground rules. So there are very few things that I am really not very flexible about, but they're basically two principles. Open, honest dialogue, where you can hear what the other party is saying and you can listen to that, and the abiding principle of nonviolence, which I want to commend the students. In the last few years, there have been strikes, and no one's been hurt, and no one's raised their hand, and you have my thanks, my respect, and my admiration for that. Beyond those two principles of open dialogue, which means that we will listen to you and you will listen to us, and that ultimately there will be no we and you, but only an us. There will be one AUB that stretches from the medical center to the School of Engineering, schools, all the faculties, arts and sciences, being the most integral to many of your undergraduate educations, and candidly to the faculty and staff here. And we expect that everyone will treat everyone else with respect, because ultimately, shared governance, as Philip was talking about, is about mutual respect and dialogue. There are other assumptions that I'd like to tear down. The idea that only a few of us are privileged enough to get a great liberal arts education at AUB. I have a different view. I think this university has 5 key constituencies. That's how it was created by its founding fathers. And I know Philip and I are coincident in our views. Of course, the students, the faculty, the alumni, the board, but the region and the world. We have to have a high bar. We have to aspire that when you come here and you encounter change and you experiment with ideas and you even foment intellectual opposition, that you will leave here more able to make transformative change in the region, in the world, and in your community than when you arrived. If you leave here diminished, then we have failed with you. But I believe that all of you who leave here, those of you, the vast majority who leave happy and empowered, and even those who leave a little bit alienated and frustrated, will realize that these are the golden years that you can learn and build on ideas that you otherwise may not have the time to experiment with elsewhere. I spent 1 year at this institution way before any of you were born, and it changed my life. I then spent 3 years at Yale, which also changed my life. I would argue my 4 years at medical school changed my life even more because I met my wife, who Philip is the only person I talked to in the dark, so I'm grateful for the restoration of the light. Here's what I propose to all of you. We all want an AUB that even exceeds today's AUB in impact, in excellence, and in scholarship. But I want to introduce a 4th element that you need to be aware of. Everyone in this room is somehow privileged and empowered and enlarged by being at this university. And there are many people far less fortunate than us who would benefit from an AUB education or from AUB reaching out into their lives in one way or another. And an understated principle of the last several generations of AUB has been the importance of service. Service is something the founding fathers fully intended for us to engage in this university. Philip is right. I believe that we will fundraise aggressively. We will increase financial aid. We will work with those who don't qualify for financial aid to make their education more affordable, more predictable, more fair. But we have to recognize that our goal is to reach not just into every community in Lebanon, but ultimately, ideally, into every community globally to extract their best and brightest, inculcate them with an AUB education that's as open and liberal and progressive as possible, and then send them out as our ambassadors into the world. You are AUB's future ambassadors into the world, just as I once was, and Philip with his junior year abroad, and Lemia and Lara. You are our future ambassadors. So I ask you and I urge you to keep an open mind and a transparent dialogue. We will talk with the student government. They will get sick of us because I don't believe in lecturing. This is going to be one of the very few lectures that I will give to the students other than at your graduation. You can Photoshop it and say you were there, but that's it. I'm not a big believer in lectures. We'll have town halls. Our exceptional Dean of Students and I will meet with you. We'll come to you and you'll come to us. But I want a dialogue, and I insist on an open, transparent, nonviolent, open-minded dialogue. And let's kick it off. I'm happy to take questions. Oh, good.
I guess I've introduced myself already, however I'll do it again.
It would be helpful if you each introduced yourself.
My name is Aysam Shmaitali. I'm the current Vice President of the University Student Faculty Committee, and by that, I'm the head of the current student government. As you know, that in the past 10 years, there's been many strikes against the tuition and to fight for student for shared governance, as you just mentioned. What will be your global policy about increases in tuition? Will you be looking towards freezing tuitions during the time that you will preside over AUB, because tuitions have escalated a lot, especially from 6 years up till now. With the implementation of the 15 credits policy five to 6 years ago, and during the other 5 years, we've had increases ranging between 6 and 3% on all students. How will you be dealing with this? Will you be trying to implement further increases on the tuitions? And how will you be dealing with transparency between the students and the administration?
Okay, so if I could ask you to keep your questions short, because my memory just can't digest a speech. No, enough. So let's talk candidly about the concept of increasing student tuition. This is a private university that's situated in a nation where middle class and working class, and I hate to use the word class, but most people find this tuition to be quite challenging. And right now we give financial aid to ballpark 40% of our students, correct me if I'm wrong. We are not able to be a completely need-blind institution. That's a fact. And hopefully, God willing, by the time that Philip finds a better president, we will have made substantial progress towards that. Is freezing tuition possible? Of course not. Tuition increases need to be managed, and we need to work with not just the students, but their families, so that these increases are not as onerous as they have been. But there's another solution, which I alluded to, beyond freezing tuition, which no top university in the world is doing, okay? And that's increasing financial aid, increasing need-based and merit-based scholarships. So I want you to remember that point, because I don't like long questions and I want to try not give you a long answer. When we attempt to raise funds to help student scholarship, and I want to tell you something spectacular that Philip just did, which is we just had a fundraiser at the Met in New York in honor of Peter Dorman that raised $250,000 in scholarship money readily available and $5 million in pledges. All for what? For student aid, for financial aid. That would not be possible without the outstanding ambassadorship shown by several students. So keep that in mind. My belief is that the better solution, rather than artificially saying we're going to freeze tuition increases and immediately I'm giving you a pledge that no university president could keep, that we're going to work hard to make more and more people be able to afford an AUB education and to work with families to see what's the impact of a full 3 or 4 year education on the financial life. But to do that, I need a dialogue with the students, and not just the student government, to understand the impact of the financial situation that they find themselves in on their lives. So the two of us will be meeting with you, and I'm going to be getting a tutorial from you rather than you getting a tutorial from me. And I only ask that we keep those few conditions: collegiality, openness, and understanding that none of us have all the solutions. Next question.
Good afternoon. I would just like to welcome you and welcome you, sir, as well. If I may, I just have some notes I wanted to ask about.
Just introduce yourself first, if you don't
I'm
mind.
sorry.
And feel free to use your notes, because I use mine. I can't.
Yusuf Sandakli, mechanical engineering student, fourth year at AUB. Okay. So I'll keep the questions short, so sir, you'd have time to answer. My first question is, are you planning on separating the financial allocations between ABMC and AUB?
So let me answer that question. While both AUBMC and the rest of the university have traditionally had separate budgets, my plans, which are fully embraced, I believe, by the board and the Dean VP of the Faculty of Medicine, are to have one AUB budget.
Okay, sir. My second question is, are we going to have clear budget allocations and budget expectations for the preceding years?
So if I may paraphrase your question, you're asking me if we're going to try to do our best to have a predictably 1 year, 3 year, 5 year budget so students can start to figure out what their total cost of the education will be. Is that your question?
This might be one of the answers, because previously when we met with President Dorman, what we got from him is that the budget at AUB is not allocated. It's solved out at the end of the year. Thus, they see their expenses at the end of the year, and this is how they set a budget.
Okay.
So what I'm asking you is, under your presidency, are you going to try to have clear budget allocations for the future years, so at the end of the year we would not have surprise tuition increases to cover up the budget deficits?
All right, so how many questions do you have? Because I don't want to bleed into the next question.
One more question.
Good, okay. So you asked a very complex question that's a challenge for all academic institutions and even candidly for business organizations. Are we going to have clear budgeting and minimize the surprises? And I have one of the few sayings that I use religiously is that surprises are good for weddings and anniversaries and maybe birthday parties, but not for work and not for life. We will try to minimize the surprises and have as predictable a budget as we can. I would not be honest if I didn't say I do not have the details, nor am I a part of the development of this coming budget. I am being informed. But certainly when I am here, we will aspire to have one budget with, given the fact that we live in an unstable region where surprises are unfortunately unavoidable, some of those surprises worse than others, some better, we will aspire to have a clear and transparent budgeting process of 1 year, 3 year, 5 years, and we will do everything we can to avoid the surprise landing in the laps of the student. However, I believe that we do have the capacity to expand some of our programs to allow even more deserving students to get an AUB education. The presidents of Yale, the last two presidents, built 2 new residential colleges. The students did not bear the burden of those residential colleges. They were entirely philanthropic, but it follows a very important principle that I adhere to, which is the more outstanding, deserving people that we can educate, the better, as long as it doesn't interfere with the education of the folks that we have, and there will be bumps.
And my last question is, I just wanted to know something that when you were introduced, we were told that you're great at building institutions. I'd just like to state something that AUB is already a renowned institution worldwide. We're not in need of a build. We might be in need of renovation, if I may. So we hope you can renovate what's missing. You stated that we could, instead of seizing the tuition increase, because it's something out of hand, we can just increase the financial aid. And what I understood from your statement is that we'd be increasing the tuition, but at the same time we'd be increasing financial aid. I see this, and you told us that a lot of universities don't use this or haven't thought of this. And I think this is because you're bearing other students, the troubles of other students. So you're bearing the...
Let me stop you there, because you're starting to say things I didn't say.
I'm sorry
okay.
if I did.
I thought this was a question and answer. And there's a question in there somewhere. I didn't say anything that other institutions haven't thought of it. On the contrary, other institutions do this. The institutions that aspire to be truly need blind use financial aid to lower the burden of those students who can pay full tuition and create a situation where the university is enabling those who cannot pay to attend, not the students who can pay full ride. Because let me just finish. Believe it or not, most education is partially subsidized by additional money. Grants, scholarship, other things. AUB is reliant on tuition to a degree that neither of us is comfortable with. We are going to try to reduce that reliance. It will never go away. No university goes away. And no university does that reliance on tuition go away on you and on others. But the mechanism will not be freezing tuition. Now your question.
Okay. Your statement just made my question more in context. Thank you. My question is now, if we do continue increasing tuition, but increase the financial aid, aren't we bearing the students who come from middle and high class with the troubles of students who come from, I don't want to say inferior classes, but
Yeah.
no, this is
Let
a
me
really bad
rescue
word.
you from this unfortunate turn of the phrase. Let me answer you before you dig yourself in a little. Okay. So I'm not Robin Hood, and neither is Philip. Okay. We are for equity. We are for equality. But what we want ultimately is to get the very best and the very brightest, whether your father is a billionaire or your father is a farmer without the ability to pay, whether your mother is a seamstress or your mother is a scholar and a CEO. I candidly don't care. I want the best and brightest, and not just from Lebanon, and that's what the board wants, and that's what you should want. Because for me, I was educated at AUB and at Yale, and both universities are far greater now than they were 35 years ago. There's a key point that you made that I want to make sure to clarify, because Philip made that point very powerfully, and then we can answer the next question. So I really hope that AUB's board did not come to me as a tear down and rebuild artist. I think we have a common consensus that this is a great university that we only want to make greater. If you scrutinize my track record, I think I've done both. The tear down is not an enjoyable business. I got out of that business, we did it for Emory. But if you look at what we built at MD Anderson, at Emory, and other places, it's a far more rewarding situation for all of us to take a great place and make it greater than take something that's on the ground and built from the ground up. And I fully understand that AUB is great, and I appreciate your allowing us to clarify that point. Thank you. Good questions. Don't throw any softballs up here. You'll make me uncomfortable.
Good evening again.
Introduce
Good afternoon. My name is Omar Salhani. I'm a business student, second year. I basically spent most of the time at my second home, AUB. I really love this institution, and I really care about it. I don't want to get too emotional here, but based on what I've seen in the past year and the strikes and everything, I think we all agree that we need one really important thing from you, sir, which is trust. We really need trust from you, sir. We need to be able to trust that change is gonna be implemented and that we're gonna improve to the better. And like basically before I came to this lecture, I asked my friends, like, the president is gonna talk, you wanna come? They were like, by the way, what's the role of the president? So here we can see some ignorance. Maybe we don't know about the role of the president, which is unclear. Or maybe it's there, but people don't care. A second thing, which is, I also asked my friend to come, the president's gonna talk. They were like, how by attending this lecture will this impact my life? So these are two things that I noticed. And away from this, there's the philosophical thing here in AUB, which I've noticed in students, which is the philosophy of grade maximizing. We see a lot of students are actually really only most of the time they care about the students. We are sometimes my friends are more interested in my grade than I am interested in mine, and we all tend to compare each one, like the grade of each one to the other, and we only view one another as grade and as numbers, unfortunately. How can we do? Like, how can we change this? Like, it's definitely something which is unacceptable, just to be emphasizing too much on the numbers and viewing people as GPAs. This is 95. This is on a list. This is this, etc. Yeah.
Okay, so I think there were 3 questions in there and 3 very important ones. If I miss one, remind me. First of all, I'm going to answer them out of order. Is there an excessive amount of careerism among the students and the faculty compared to, let's say, a liberal arts university somewhere else or a major research university? I'm not sure. I don't have enough data to judge it. You have to remember that I'm a scientist and a physician first and foremost, and a leader as well. But I don't tend to make conclusions before I have the data. And you've got to give me some time to observe what's great, what's good, and what could be better about this place. I'm not in a position to judge that. But I will point out that this is it. Your undergraduate education is your short, brilliant, brief time to test yourself against the courses that are going to make you cry and get frustrated, and in which not only an A but a B is not guaranteed. I took courses that I found very difficult, and it hurt my GPA. And I did okay. I'm sure Dr. Halawi did the same, Philip, Lemia, you know, and so on and so forth, am I right? So I urge you to test yourself. This is the safest ground to experiment with challenging concepts, ideas, social organisms, other things. That's it. Once you're in the professional world, you can continue to make mistakes, and life is about making mistakes and picking yourself up. But the consequences change. I'm not going to say they're more profound or less profound. I leave that to you to experience. But if you're not going to test yourself as an undergraduate, then you will have missed a golden opportunity. I took a lot of history courses in which the other students were infinitely more gifted than I was. We did okay, but I learned a lot, and I found them extremely enjoyable. Now, here's the biggest question that I was waiting to ask, is about trust and respect, which are not the same things. Let's start from the ground level. Let's start with respect. I respect you, and you will respect me, even if it's to boycott this meeting, which some of you have done. That's okay. I have thick skin. I won't lose any sleep over people listening or not listening. But let's start with respect. Trust is earned. Admiration is earned. I would say we should start with respect, with a respectful and open dialogue, with the ability not just to listen to one another, but really hear what we're all saying, and then go from there. And as for someone who misses this dialogue, I'm not worried about them. There'll be opportunities for dialogue, God willing, for years to come. But that's how it starts. It starts with respect.
But just for the
I must have forgotten one question. Go ahead.
just for the great maximizing philosophy here, are you gonna change? Do you have anything in mind to?
I'm not going to change anything before I've studied it.
Okay, that's
because in every field of endeavor, from history all the way to engineering and medicine in between, you always want the data to speak for themselves. You want the facts. And the concept of grade maximizing or minimizing, look, the great universities are besides themselves. You know, Princeton lowers everyone's grades. Harvard says you're a Harvard student, so you really shouldn't get less than a B plus or an A minus. If you think you've gotten the world expert in grade maximization or minimization in me, you really have bought a portion of the Brooklyn Bridge, I'm afraid. Let's study the issues and understand what's most relevant to the greatest number of you, and understand that no solution that I ever put forward will ever be fully embraced as perfect by all of you. When that day comes, we'll have moved into a nice new totalitarian utopia. Okay?
Thank you, Dr. Fadlo. Thank you, sir, for this talk. My name is Ali Amaz. I'm a business student, sophomore. And excuse me if what I'm about to ask is a bit sensitive. But I'm curious to know, and I'm sure some people here are also curious to know, is what are your thoughts on the so-called corruption scandals that were accused against AUB from several newspapers, mainly Al-Akhbar, and to what extent do you think they hold some truth? And we're also curious to know what you plan on doing about it. And another question, should I ask it later or now?
Why don't we answer one and then go to the next one?
Yes, please.
Is that okay with everyone? Sure.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. So let's start. You were asking me about the allegations of corruption, which from my experience even from 33 years ago. I have to say the bar is a little lower in this part of the world for using that term because it seems to have less negative consequence for the accuser. Even having said that, I don't tend to ignore anything, okay? You already know my background. This is not a set of principles with which I'm intimate, the idea of corruption or non-corruption here or there. I hear about it all the time. I will say the following. From my perspective, I always start with the presumption of innocence. If someone has credible evidence that's brought forward implicating corruption, we will investigate it, and if found to be correct, we will act on it. But the presumption of innocence, which governs all of us in an American institution, is that an accusation does not equal a fact. It's important for students to want to know that their administration, their leaders are people of integrity carrying out principles of honesty and justice. I promise you we will chase any credible lead. But I don't have the knowledge or the inclination to get into things that happened before I came here. What I can promise you is that we will make mistakes, but they will be mistakes of commission, of omission, well-intentioned mistakes to move forward the university. But if we do find evidence, credible evidence of corruption, I think the board and I and the leadership are unanimous that we will pursue it.
All right, thank you.
Next question.
Thank you. The second question is that there's this sort of mentality, if I can use that term correctly, that we're always trying to pursue or seem like or get to the level of Ivy League schools or very top competitive schools, and that's for me that's a very commendable effort. But the ways in which we're trying to get there, from my perspective, I worked for a year at MIDS, I know a lot about American colleges. From my perspective, and it might be wrong, we're not following the right lead. I mean, we're making the courses tougher, we're decreasing the possibility of curving the grades, we're putting more material into stuff, but it's not. It's more of memorizing than actual conceptual thinking, and it's more about textbooks and slides and multiple choice questions that don't pertain to analysis as much as they pertain to memory. So we're curious to know if we can if we can alter the program curriculum in a way that's more conceptually thinking than memorizing. Thank you.
So that's a fantastic point, and I want to use it to circle back. The tuition, the financial burden on families is absolutely an urgent issue for students. I get that. I promise you we won't ignore it. But far more important for generations to come is the curriculum. And right now, you are engaged in a great education, whether liberal arts, business, engineering, finance, medicine, public health, agriculture, you name it, that is in the midst of what really, and Philip is one of the world authorities on this, is a revolution in how we deliver both an undergraduate, liberal arts, and higher education. How do we teach? Should there be more things online, more textbooks, more rote learning? Most of us would say probably no to more rote learning. How do we evaluate people? Do we have the tools? What's the best way that we can extract from that student what is best in and about her or him? And the honest truth is we don't know right now. And with regard to the perspective, we have many signposts that predict for a good outcome, a scholar who leaves their university and goes on to do good things. Part of them are grades, part of them are engagement. Part of them, believe it or not, is participation in student life. That's actually a pretty good criteria for how you're going to turn out. If you sit in your room, and Dr. Halawi's course is so challenging that you become a virtual hermit for 4 years, that's all you take, you will not be well prepared for life. I want you to challenge yourself, but I want you to partake in everything that is great about AUB without getting lost so that you're 8 miles wide and 2 inches deep. But there's another very important question that you implied, but you were too polite to state, which I appreciate. And this is a good start to the dialogue, but I want you to feel at ease and be candid. Are we trying to ape the Ivies? Does the board's bringing someone who was embedded into the Ivies and then chose on my own volition to perhaps try different things, does that mean AUB is going to become the 9th Ivy? No. AUB has strengths that are very different than the great universities of the US, and candidly, you're giving the Ivies too much credit. He's from MIT. I would argue their research output exceeds any Ivy per faculty. That's not my opinion. Those are data. And in the next 3, 5, 10, 15 years, however long we're together, we're going to talk about data. So the data are that we are reevaluating what makes AUB the greatest AUB it can be. Because, and this is the only part I'd like to disclose in my charge to the board, is one of the things for now, more of it will come out during the inauguration. This is not a question of transparency, but a question of not overloading all of you with data and ideas. I think that AUB is, for its region, the most impactful university in the world. If you compare AUB's impact to even the great American or British or Eastern Asian universities, no other university has such a deep and broad and historic regional and international impact. So next year we'll celebrate the 150th anniversary of AUB together. And I want that to be more about learning what did the first 150 years do to inform the next 150 years, of which we will steward just a flicker. But this university is a beacon of light that we don't want to convert to the flashlight that each of the Ivies are.
Hello, sir. My name is Aya Htet. I'm a chemical engineering and engineering management student. Well, first, I'd like to welcome you to AUB, and I hope that you'll have many successful years to come. And what I'd like to ask you about is something as equally, it's as important as the two subjects we've been talking about. So other than financial aid, financial problems, and academic improvement, there's a really important issue that students are facing, which is the career opportunities, career guidance. I think this is one of the most important issues, but I don't see that a lot of stuff are being done at AUB to improve it. It's part of what AUB promises, better career opportunities, but we're still having a lot of problems finding internships and jobs. I'm not suggesting that AUB should find a magical solution and find every single student a job, but there are a lot of trends in the career market, a lot of skills that students need to learn, approaches, and as you said, it's one of the important things to allow students to change and acquire more skills to be able to face different things. We raised this issue a lot of times to the administration, and well, one of the most phrases we've been getting back is that the Career and Placement Center is working on future plans. Is this issue on your agenda, and if there is a ready plan by the students that suggests making use of the vast and rich resources that we have as AUB, alumni, networking and everything, would you accept, I mean, after answering the question as if it's on your agenda or not, would you consider a plan that is suggested by the students and that solely depends on AUB networks and all the extensions that we have?
Okay, so let me answer, I think there are two questions. Yep. Other questions, or should I just answer?
No, that's my concern for now.
First of all, thank you, and thank you all for welcoming me here. I do appreciate it. I'm sorry it's taken me so long to say it, and I know it's sincere, so thank you. So absolutely critical to my agenda, you heard me start with saying there are 5 constituencies, and the alumni are certainly far from last. You may know that I am an alumni elected trustee. And I have long believed that given the impact, the reach, and the excellence of AUB's alumni network, we do not take advantage of it to the degree that our students require. So I do not see the alumni, as Philip already stated, just as a source for financial support, but also career support, mentorship, and opportunities. From my perspective, once you're an AUB student, an AUB alumni, you've done 1 year on the campus, 1 year, you are forever part of the AUB family. Now this amendment to the alumni guidelines let the two of us in, and Lemia, who spent 3 years here. This is one of the most difficult international job markets we've faced in our lifetime. And it's particularly difficult if you look at the data that's been published on people aged 23 to 35. We get that. The career counseling, career development, the counseling offices are working hard, and I will get to know your Dean of Students probably as well, if not better, than any of the other deans, because I believe that our obligation to you is not just to say, we've given you a great liberal arts education, but to help you, not to secure a job for you, but to help you to move forward into the world so that this is always your mooring place, but you will go on to do great things. My goal is that many of you in this audience will leave this room and in 20, 30 years will exceed my impact on my region and my field and my area. As to whether I would accept a student plan for consideration, of course, but I will not accept any plan for automatic implementation before we have the chance to look at it and weigh it. And don't feel special or don't feel put upon. I don't accept plans from my faculty or vice chairs without my input, and I won't accept it from my deans or provost here. I am not a completely hands-off leader. So that's a great part of the dialogue. Let's talk. Send it to me by email. Remember, I start September 1, so until then I'm a trustee and in an advisory capacity. But let's talk about what we can do better. Absolutely. Tell me the things that we can do better. Let's work together.
Thank you.
So thank you. We have just 2 or 3 minutes left, so maybe time for one more question. I see someone down here. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Fatima Ghaddar. I'm an MD graduate from AUB and currently pursuing Masters in Public Health. I have 3 questions. They're very short, but my first one is a bit personal. I'm interested to know what the impact of your father has been on your pursuit to be involved on committees related to AUB over the past 10 years.
That's a long answer, but obviously both my mother and my father had profound impact on me. We have to be a little careful with this in the Near East. If we all think about it, our mothers had at least as much impact on us, and I think that's true for me. But of course, my father's devoted his career, and my mother most of her career, to this university. I grew up on this campus. Fortunately, thanks to Philip, I got an email today from my oldest friend, Hussein Ibish, who he and I used to be put on the oval to play on the grass when we were less than 1 year old. So AUB is in my blood. It's not just my father. Okay.
My second question is, what are your thoughts / vision about medical education at AUB? What do you know about it? Maybe you don't know much, but what do you know about it? What is your vision regarding medical education?
So even though I was a member of the executive committee that rewrote Emory's undergraduate medical education, your MD equivalent, and even though I am the chair of Dean VP Sayeg's International Advisory Committee and do know something about medical education, there's a lot that I can learn, and I have I told you I would be transparent. I have a friend of 40-something years in Kamal Badr, who is the Associate Dean for Education, who has already offered to educate me, and I will learn a lot. I do believe it's an ambitious curriculum, and I'm impressed with the way the residents that come to us in the US perform, and I'm also impressed with the young people and the questions they ask me when I visit the medical school. Having said that, I'm not a micromanager. The dean is eminently qualified and visionary. That's his area. The fact that he and I are good friends, and he likes me to see what he's doing, I will imbibe in it. But I'm not just the medical school's dean, as you'll understand.
No, definitely.
I am the president of all the university, and I will maintain my interest in undergraduate medical education, but enhance my interest in history and engineering.
I understand. My third question is related to the faculty, but maybe what I've heard is hearsay, but I'd like to hear your opinion about it. So I've heard a lot about AUB paying women faculty members less than equally qualified male faculty members. Regardless of whether this is true or not, whether there's data, whether someone has done research on the topic, what are your thoughts about it? And if it is true, what do you intend to do about it?
That's a great question. I'm going to go back to your first question. My mother, who was a true believer in women's lib, made sure that her sons and daughter were well inculcated in the concept of equality. If this is true, we will correct it. But equity between genders is absolutely an unbendable principle. Equity between people of different races, classes, sects, creeds, sexual orientation is absolutely sacred. But then beyond that, there is productivity. And what I'd like to say, we want to level the playing field. You will see that in our leadership team, the roles of women will be encouraged, advanced. We need some equal opportunity here. One of the people who will be advising me closely is arguably the greatest woman leader, in my view, in the history of AUB, which is Huda Zrei, okay? We want some high bars, because in my view, women are at least as capable of men of achieving.
Thank you.
Great. So, Morgan, are we finished, or is there?
We're finished. There's a reception outside.
Yes, so we have a reception outside, and Dr. Khoury will be available, so please come and ask him your questions. And may I just say, as a silent observer, your questions have been terrific, honestly, and we both appreciate hearing them, and thank you for your good answers and for being with us.
Thank you for your questions, and you're welcome.
Please join us outside, even for a little bit. Good work.